Australia holds one of the most unusual fossil records on the planet, shaped by deep time, isolation, and exceptional preservation. From Cambrian arthropods with experimental body plans, to megafauna that rewrote the rules of mammalian evolution, Australian fossils document evolutionary pathways rarely seen elsewhere. Some specimens even preserve soft tissues, embryos, and internal organs, finds once thought impossible. Of all the truly unusual creatures discovered from the prehistoric world, few compare to a marsupial as strange as Palorchestes. Palorchestes, which literally means ancient leaper, was a massive, plant-eating marsupial that roamed Australia from the Miocene, around 15 million years ago, all the way into the late Pleistocene, about 11,700 years ago. And, despite the name, it wasn't leaping anywhere. It had this weirdly retracted nose, which scientists now think supported strong, prehensile lips, and seriously powerful forelimbs tipped with huge claws. Perfect for grabbing branches, pulling down foliage, and stripping bark. The genus was first named in 1873 by anatomist Richard Owen. At first, he thought he was looking at the jaw of a giant prehistoric kangaroo, which explains the name. Even though Owen clearly explained this in his original description, a mistranslation published in 1945 rendered the name as Ancient Dancer. Later fossil discoveries, especially more complete skeletons, showed that Palorchestes wasn't a kangaroo at all. 13 years later, it was officially reclassified as a diprotodontid, related to the massive Diprotodon. An earlier, likely ancestral genus, Palorchestes, shared similar molars but had a shorter snout and smaller build. Palorchestes included about 5 species, though fossils are rare. A juvenile jaw from the Pleistocene Darling Downs doesn't match known species, suggesting possible coexistence of multiple species, sexual dimorphism, or an entirely new species. The largest species, Palorchestes azale, was absolutely enormous. Estimates suggest it reached about 2.5 meters in length, around 8.2 foot, and may have weighed over 1,000 kilograms, or 2,200 pounds. All species were quadrupedal, with thick, robust limbs, with the front legs bearing massive, koala-like claws. The long lower jaw, or mandibular symphysis, suggests a highly flexible, giraffe-like tongue. For decades, there was debate about whether Palorchestes had a short trunk. This idea gave it the nickname marsupial tapir, but recent studies of cranial anatomy strongly supported the presence of thick, muscular lips instead, rather than a proboscis. Dental morphology, including a distinctive midlink on the first molar, sets Palorchestes apart from its earlier relatives, and confirms that it was a selective browser. Its elbow joint had a limited range of motion, meaning the forelimbs probably sprawled a bit when it walked on all fours. It likely used those strong front legs to reach and manipulate vegetation, and, it may even have fed partially or fully while standing on its hind legs. Tiny eye sockets indicate very poor vision, so it probably relied mostly on smell. Given how rare its fossils are, researchers think it was likely a solitary animal with large ranges and slow reproduction. Ekaltadeta was a pretty unusual extinct marsupial, closely related to today's musky rat kangaroos, but way more hardcore. These guys lived in what's now the Riversley World Heritage Area in northern Queensland, from the late Oligocene into the Miocene, so roughly 28 to 10 million years ago. The genus includes 3 described species, and they're all known only from Riversley. What really makes Ekaltadeta stand out are its teeth. It had this huge third premolar, unlike anything you'd see in a normal herbivorous marsupial. That tooth tells us it was probably either all in on meat, or at least heavily into it, which is honestly pretty wild for a marsupial of its size. Fossils include 2 nearly complete skulls, plus lots of upper and lower jaws, so paleontologists could really study how it bit and chewed. The body was fairly small, probably around 1 to 2 kilograms or 2 to 4 pounds, so not huge, but those teeth mean it was punching way above its weight in terms of predatory ability. The genus was first described in 1985, with Ekaltadeta as the type species. Later research clarified that it belonged to Hypsiprimnodontidae, the same family as musky rat kangaroos, rather than poteroid kangaroos as originally thought. The name Ekaltadeta comes from indigenous words meaning powerful tooth, which is super fitting. All 3 species being unique to Riversley makes Ekaltadeta a totally Aussie evolutionary oddball, showing just how wild marsupials' diets and lifestyles could get back then. I have no idea why this creature had that surname, but I like it. Obdurodon dicksoni was a giant, platypus-like Australian monotreme from the Riversley fossil site in northern Queensland. Estimates suggest it was around 60 to 80 centimeters, or 2 to 2.6 feet long, maybe more including the tail. Its skull, one of the perfect fossils found at Riversley, had a spoon-shaped bill and fully functional molar teeth, unlike today's platypus, hinting it could tackle tougher prey. Obdurodon dicksoni lived during the early to middle Miocene, roughly 23 to 15 million years ago, in a landscape of lakes, pools, and limestone caves. Rainforests lined the waterways, while open forests and woodlands stretched further inland, perfect for a large, semi-aquatic monotreme. Fossils include a well-preserved skull, lower jaw fragments, and isolated teeth. And its skull was unusually flat and robust, almost croc-like, with fully rooted premolars and molars, but no teeth at the very front. The lower jaw had strong angular and coronoid processes, suggesting a more powerful bite than modern platypuses. Postcranial bones haven't been found yet, so we're still guessing about its full body shape. Diet-wise, Obdurodon was likely opportunistic. It probably ate insect larvae, yabbies, crustaceans, and maybe small vertebrates like frogs or fish. That flat, broad bill hints it may have spent more time snapping prey at the water's surface rather than foraging on the bottom like today's platypus. Like all monotremes, it laid eggs and probably dug burrows along riverbanks. Much like modern platypuses, its exact lifestyle beyond that remains a mystery, given the missing postcranial fossils, as I said before. Other species of Obdurodon lived in Central Australia, including Obdurodon insignis from the late Oligocene, and an unnamed species from the Terrari Desert. A close relative, Monotrematum sudamericanum, is known from Paleocene Patagonia, showing that platypuses were once widespread across Gondwana. Evolutionarily, monotremes are tricky, but we know modern platypus is descended from toothed, Cainozoic relatives like Obdurodon. So yeah, Obdurodon dicksoni, toothy, flat build, and a Miocene powerhouse, proved that platypuses were way more hardcore in the past than the cute little guys we know today. This fossil spider is basically a Miocene monster, Megamonodontium mccluskyi, roaming around between 16 to 11 million years ago. The fossil came from McGrath's Flat in New South Wales, a site famous for its iron-rich rock called goethite, and it's the first fossil of a Barrichellidae spider ever found, anywhere in the world. Basically, it's a super-sized cousin of the modern Monodontium, the brushed trapdoor spider, but this bad boy was about 5 times bigger. The spider's name honours Dr. Simon McCluskyi, a Canberra-based geospatial scientist who volunteers on digs and actually found the specimen. Dr. McCurry also explained why this find is such a big deal. There have been very few fossil spiders found in Australia, so this is huge. The closest living relatives now hang out in wet forests from Singapore to Papua New Guinea. This tells us these spiders once thrived in Aussie forests before things got too dry. Meanwhile, Dr. Robert Raven from the Queensland Museum dropped another jaw-dropper. Not only is this the largest fossil spider found in Australia, it's the first Barrichellidae fossil ever, worldwide. Apparently, brush-footed trapdoor spiders, about 300 species alive today, rarely fossilize, probably because they spend so much time chilling in burrows. Lucky for us, McGrath's Flat was just the right spot. The fossil we have is insanely preserved. We can see the tiniest structures, claws, hairs, even the setae on the legs and pedipalps. These little hairs sense chemicals, detect vibrations, fend off attackers, and even make sounds. To make it extra spicy, there was a jumping spider from the same site, different crawly crew, same epic Miocene vibes. Speaking of the Miocene, about 23 to 5 million years ago, Australia was a totally different place back then. The continent had split from Antarctica and South America and was drifting north. Early Miocene Australia was packed with lush forests, crazy plant and animal diversity, and basically an ecosystem paradise. But around 14 million years ago, an event called the Middle Miocene Disruption hit, causing mass extinctions. Over the rest of the Miocene, Australia slowly dried out, rainforests shrank, and the desert and shrublands we know today started to dominate. McGrath's Flat gives us a rare window into what life looked like before Australia went all arid. These were small but seriously fascinating crocs from way back in Australasia. Unlike the giant river crocs you probably imagine, Mekosuchus were usually less than 2 meters or 6 foot 7 inches long, walked on land, and had short, blunt-snouted heads with strong limbs built for, well, actually walking. There are 4 species we know of, but honestly, most of what we have are fragmentary fossils. They first popped up on mainland Australia during the Oligocene and Miocene, living alongside all kinds of Mekosuchians. Some were terrestrial hunters like them, some were semi-aquatic ambush predators, and some had these crazy long snouts for catching fish. Take Mekosuchus whitehunterensis, for instance. Its neck vertebra suggests it could really thrash its head side to side to tear meat from carcasses, thanks to blade-like teeth. Later on, some species made it out to Pacific islands like New Caledonia and Vanuatu. And they might have survived as recently as 3,000 years ago, though, yeah, some folks think maybe even more recently. Their skulls were pretty unique too, short and raised rather than flat and long like most modern crocs. People compare them to modern dwarf crocodiles or extinct terrestrial crocs like Trilophosuchus. The skulls varied between species, things like the shape of the palatine bones, and the teeth. Older species had blade-like teeth perfect for slicing meat, while later ones, like Mekosuchus inexpectatus, had bulbous molars for crushing shellfish. Their limb bones and forward-facing eyes and nostrils all point to a life mostly on land. Size-wise, Mekosuchus whitehunterensis could be as tiny as 60 centimeters, or 2 feet, making it comparable to today's dwarf crocs, while Mekosuchus inexpectatus was more like 2 meters, 6 foot 7 inches, still small, but enough to be a serious predator in its niche. They probably spread across the South Pacific via short ocean crossings, helped along by lower sea levels back in the day. As for why they went extinct, humans might have had something to do with it, in places like Vanuatu, through hunting, habitat destruction, or invasive species. But in New Caledonia, most fossils predate human arrival, so it's still kind of a mystery. Now, time to head back to Australia's Cretaceous period. Muttaburrasaurus was a hefty herbivore, cruising around between 112 and 103 million years ago. Think of it as a mix between your classic iguanodontian and something a little more exotic. Some studies peg it in the rhabdodontomorph gang, others toss it in Elasmeria. Either way, it's one of Australia's best-known dinos, second only to Canberrasaurus, thanks to some pretty complete skeletons. It even got picked as the official fossil emblem of Queensland. In life, Muttaburrasaurus was about 8 meters long, or 26 foot, and tipping the scales at roughly 2.8 tons. The femur alone clocks in at just over a meter, or 40 inches. Whether it walked on all fours or just its hind legs has been debated for decades. Early reconstructions imagined a thumb spike, like a mini stegosaurus weapon, but later research says, nah, probably not. Its foot, long, broad and four-toed, built to stomp through the Cretaceous bush. The skull is where things get really wild. Flat, broad at the back, tapering to a pointed snout, with this insane hollow nasal bulla, basically a big, upward bulging nose. Scientists think it might have been used for calls, or maybe as a display to show off to other dinos. Total Jurassic Party horn vibes. Older species had shorter versions of this nasal bump, so it wasn't always this dramatic. Muttaburrasaurus had jaw power for days, with shearing teeth that grew directly under previous ones. No multi-layered tooth battery like the fancy later ornithopods. This setup meant no real chewing, just slicing and grinding tough plants. Early speculation even flirted with the idea that it might have been an omnivore, occasionally snacking on carrion. Later, though, scientists realized its dental system was more like ceratopsians, perfectly evolved for chomping down on cycads and other tough vegetation of the Cretaceous. Classification-wise, it's been a bit of a moving target. First, it was tossed into Iguanodontidae. Then paleontologists debated Camptosauridae, Dryosauridae, Ipsilophodontidae. The list goes on. Basically, Muttaburrasaurus is one of those dinos that keeps paleontologists on their toes. Koolasuchus is a seriously cool, extinct aquatic beast from the early Cretaceous of what is now Australia. This giant temnospondyle, basically a massive prehistoric amphibian, lived around 125 to 120 million years ago, making it the youngest known temnospondyle on the planet. Fossils have turned up in Victoria, including bits of skull, vertebra, ribs and pectoral bones, giving us just enough to piece together this monster's lifestyle. The type species, Koolasuchus cleelandi, was officially named in 1997 and became Victoria's fossil emblem in 2022. It could reach up to 3 meters, almost 10 feet, long and weigh around 500 kilograms or 1,100 pounds. Its head was wide and rounded, topped with tabular horns jutting from the back of the skull, giving it a distinct, almost menacing silhouette. The skull alone was probably about 65 centimeters, or 26 inches long, though no complete skull has ever been fully described. Its jaw was a serious weapon. Koolasuchus had 40 sharp, serrated teeth lining its mandible, each with lance-like tips and quills along the sides, perfect for grabbing and slicing prey. Unlike some other temnospondyles, it didn't have teeth on the coronoid process, which is one of the ways paleontologists distinguish it from relatives like Siderops and Hadrosaurus. The mandible itself shows specialized articulations, making its bite both strong and precise. Koolasuchus lived in rift valleys and fast-moving streams, and this was no tropical paradise. It was south of the Antarctic Circle, so the water was pretty chilly compared to other Mesozoic environments. Think of it like a cold-water crocodilian, patrolling rivers and snapping up anything that wandered too close. Its existence in these cooler waters also explains why crocodilians were absent from southern Australia back then. They just weren't tough enough for the climate. By around 110 million years ago, the region warmed up. Crocodilians moved back in, and Koolasuchus seems to have been edged out of its niche. Even though we mostly have fragments, Koolasuchus stands out as a perfect mix of size, adaptation, and sheer wow factor. With its horned head, toothy grin, and icy rivers to rule, it was the ultimate predator of southern Australia's Cretaceous streams, a true underdog amphibian that thrived in extreme conditions long before modern crocs took over. Ferrodraco, or the Iron Dragon of ancient Australia. This badass pterosaur ruled the skies over Queensland around 96 million years ago during the late Cretaceous. Its name comes from the ironstone where it was found. And yeah, this isn't just any pterosaur. Ferrodraco is the most complete pterosaur ever found in Australia. Ferrodraco had a wingspan of about 4 meters, or 13 feet, and weighed roughly 10 kilograms or 22 pounds. Lean, mean, and perfect for cruising Cretaceous skies. Its skull was around 60 centimeters or 2 feet long, with a hollow, thin crest rising steeply from the snout like a jagged sail. This crest probably might have helped with display, species recognition, or even making calls. Its jaws were lined with 50 conical, slightly flattened teeth, creating a jagged, undulating top view, perfect for grabbing slippery prey. Ferrodraco's teeth and jaw setup were unique. The first pair of teeth in the upper and lower jaws were smaller than the ones behind them, and the 4th to 7th tooth pairs were slightly smaller than the 3rd and 8th. The premaxilla at the front of the snout was flat and triangular, with the first teeth tilted slightly above the jawline, and the rear teeth pointing straight down, gradually shrinking in size. This sky warrior was part of Anhanguaria, and more specifically, the Tropiognathinae, with its closest relative being Myfunga, another Aussie pterosaur. Studies show that Ferrodraco was one of the youngest members of its group, proving that these iconic Cretaceous flyers survived longer in Australia than previously thought. Its discovery also tells us Australia's pterosaur diversity has been seriously underestimated. There were clearly more sky predators swooping over the continent than fossils alone have revealed. 26 million years ago, off the coast of what's now Victoria, Australia, a dolphin-sized predator ruled the warm, shallow seas. It was Janjucetus dullardi, a whale that didn't bother with filter feeders like its modern cousins. Nah, this little beast had huge, piercing eyes, a broad triangular snout, and a mouthful of serrated, shark-style teeth ready to tear anything that moved. Its jaw was a solid steel trap. The two halves fused together, unlike today's baleen whales that can flare their mouths wide to slurp krill like pasta. Front incisors and canines stabbed, premolars and molars shredded, all deeply rooted and reinforced with rigid enamel, basically a bite engineered for maximum carnage. Janjucetus was fast, sleek, and smart. Its giant eyes perched high on the skull meant it relied on vision, not echolocation. Basically a shark-eyed hunter in a whale's body. About 3.5 meters or 11 feet long, it prowled the warm seas like a mini oceanic ninja, snatching fish, squid, and tiny vertebrates, all while evolution was busy cooking up the massive filter-feeding whales that we know today. Discovered in 2019, the fossil unlocked a secret chapter of whale evolution. Even though it looks like a cute prehistoric whale, Janjucetus was a specialist predator, a snapshot of experimentation before nature hits the jackpot with baleen giants. Its snout width may have even foreshadowed the massive mouths of today's whales, but with teeth designed to kill, not filter.